What if the secret to driving a woman wild wasn't just about technique, but psychology? Carl Jung, the legendary psychoanalyst, believed that touch speaks directly to the unconscious mind. Certain spots don't just feel good, they awaken deep emotional desires, primal connections, and even hidden archetypes. Today, we're uncovering the 7 places women truly crave to be touched, and the surprising Jungian psychology behind why they work. Pay close attention. Number 5 might change the way you think about intimacy forever. According to Carl Jung, touch is far more than physical. It's a bridge between the body and the soul. He described the anima, the feminine unconscious, and animus, the masculine unconscious, as forces that shape how we experience intimacy. When you touch a woman the right way, you're not just stimulating her body, you're speaking to her deepest instincts, her vulnerabilities, and even ancient symbols of trust and desire. For example, Jung believed that certain body parts carry unconscious meaning. The curve of the neck isn't just sensitive skin, it's a symbol of surrender. The lower back isn't just an erogenous zone, it's an archetype of protection. Touch isn't just about pleasure, it's a language of the unconscious. And if you know how to speak it, you can create a connection that goes way beyond the physical. Spot 1. The lower back. Let's begin with the first and perhaps most underrated spot, the lower back. At first glance, it might not seem like the most obvious erogenous zone, but according to Jungian psychology, this area carries profound symbolic weight. Carl Jung's concept of the mother archetype plays a key role here. The mother archetype isn't just about literal motherhood. It's a universal symbol of nurturing, protection, and unconditional safety. When you touch a woman's lower back with intention, you're tapping into something far deeper than physical sensation. You're activating an almost primal sense of being supported, both physically and emotionally. Think about the way a mother's hand naturally rests on a child's lower back for reassurance, or how partners instinctively place a hand there when guiding each other through a crowd. These gestures aren't random. They're embedded in our collective unconscious as signals of trust and stability. When a man touches a woman there, especially in moments of closeness, it can evoke an immediate sense of comfort and surrender. The lower back is a vulnerable area. It's not guarded like the stomach or ribcage, yet it's not as overtly sexual as, say, the hips or thighs. That subtle vulnerability is what makes the touch so powerful. It's a nonverbal way of saying, "I've got you." But there's an art to touching this spot in a way that feels intimate rather than casual. A light, lingering stroke just above the waistline can send shivers down her spine, especially when paired with closeness, like when you're standing behind her or pulling her in. The pressure matters too. Too firm, and it might feel controlling. Too hesitant, and it loses its impact. The key is confident, warm contact, something that mirrors the archetypal security the mother figure represents. Jung would argue that this kind of touch resonates because it satisfies a deeper psychological need, the longing for a sanctuary, a place where defenses can drop. In relationships, women often carry an unconscious expectation of emotional and physical safety, shaped by the anima, the inner feminine. When you touch her lower back in the right way, you're not just making her body respond, you're reassuring that hidden, instinctual part of her psyche. Interestingly, this spot also bridges sensuality and everyday affection. A hand resting on the small of her back while introducing her to friends, or a slow rub when she's stressed, can be just as electrifying as a more overtly sexual touch. That duality is what makes it so potent. It's both protective and possessive, comforting and arousing. And because it's not as overt as other zones, it builds anticipation. She'll notice, and remember, the way your hand lingers there when you're close. From a Jungian lens, the lower back is a threshold between the conscious and unconscious reactions to touch. It's not just about nerve endings, it's about symbolism. When touched with presence, it doesn't just feel good, it means something. And that's the difference between a forgettable physical gesture and one that lingers in her mind long after your hand has moved away. Spot 2. The neck/nape. Few areas of the body carry as much psychological and sensual significance as the neck and nape. This delicate curve where shoulder meets spine has been a focal point of artistic and literary seduction for centuries, from Renaissance paintings to vampire lore, because it represents such a powerful intersection of vulnerability and desire. In Jungian terms, this region embodies the maiden archetype in its purest form, exposed yet alluring, sensitive yet strong. The neck is literally the bridge between mind and body, where rational thought meets primal instinct. From an evolutionary perspective, the neck's erotic power makes perfect sense. It houses major arteries and vital pathways. To expose it is to demonstrate ultimate trust. This is why we instinctively tilt our heads when comfortable with someone, offering this vulnerable zone almost unconsciously. The nape in particular triggers what psychologists call cutaneous arousal, that flush of goosebumps when touched unexpectedly. But beyond biology, Jung would argue this response taps into deeper symbolic meanings. The maiden archetype represents innocence in transition, not weakness, but the potent vulnerability that precedes transformation. When you touch a woman's neck with intention, you're engaging with this psychological threshold. The quality of touch here requires particular finesse. Unlike the lower back's message of support, neck contact communicates something more intimate. It's a silent question rather than a statement. Light fingertips tracing the hairline create anticipation, while firmer pressure along the trapezius muscles can release tension in a way that feels both therapeutic and sensual. The contrast is key. The side of the neck responds to feather-like caresses, while the back of the neck can handle more deliberate massage. Breath matters too. Warm exhalation against this sensitive skin activates multiple sensory pathways simultaneously. What makes this spot uniquely powerful is its ability to shift contexts seamlessly. A kiss behind the ear in public can carry private meaning, while deliberate attention to this area in intimacy speaks directly to the unconscious. Jung might describe this as accessing the anima through the back door of consciousness, bypassing rational defenses through sensory archetypes. In many cultures, the nape is considered the seat of the soul's connection to the body, making its stimulation profoundly grounding yet transcendent. This dual nature, both anchoring and elevating, explains why skillful attention here can produce such visceral emotional responses. The neck's symbolism extends beyond physical interaction. We speak of risking one's neck or being breathless with anticipation, language that reveals how deeply this area represents emotional exposure. When touched with awareness of this psychological weight, a simple caress becomes layered communication. It says, "I see your vulnerability and find it beautiful," without uttering a word, fulfilling the maiden archetype's deepest longing, to be cherished precisely in her openness. This is why women often report neck attention as feeling dangerously good. It satisfies an unconscious yearning for safe surrender that transcends cultural conditioning and taps into universal feminine symbolism. Spot 3. The hands/fingers. Few gestures carry as much psychological weight as the simple act of touching hands. Carl Jung saw the hand as the ultimate symbol of the union of opposites, where masculine and feminine energies meet in partnership. The anima, feminine essence, and animus, masculine essence, find physical expression in the way hands intertwine, communicate, and explore. Unlike more overtly sexual zones, the hands represent connection before pleasure, a bridge between two people rather than just a point of stimulation. There's a reason why first touches often begin with the hands. The fingertips are among the most nerve-rich areas of the body, making them exquisitely sensitive to pressure, texture, and temperature. But beyond biology, Jung would argue that hand-holding or finger tracing activates something archetypal, the primal human need to bond through touch. In medieval courtship traditions, gloves were removed to allow skin contact as a sign of trust. In modern relationships, the way a man holds a woman's hand, whether with gentle reverence or firm possession, communicates volumes about his unconscious animus energy. The most electrifying hand touches aren't necessarily the most obvious. A thumb slowly stroking her palm during conversation can be more intimate than a kiss because it speaks to the unconscious. Playing with her fingers, tracing circles on the inside of her knuckles or lightly squeezing the tips, engages her tactile awareness in a way that feels both soothing and arousing. Even something as simple as warming her cold hands in yours triggers Jung's concept of the nurturing masculine, fulfilling an anima longing for protection and tenderness. What makes hand contact so powerful is its duality. It can be innocent in public yet charged in private, a silent language that builds anticipation. Jung believed the hands reveal the psyche's hidden desires, an anxious grip, a relaxed palm, fingers that linger just a second too long. When touched with intention, they don't just respond, they answer. Spot 4. The hair/scalp. Few touches evoke such instant comfort as fingers running through hair. From an evolutionary standpoint, hair grooming is deeply embedded in social bonding. Think primates removing parasites or mothers detangling a child's curls. Jung would link this to the collective unconscious, where scalp stimulation represents nurturance in its purest form. The act of having one's hair touch triggers what psychologists call affective touch, a type of sensation tied to emotional security rather than eroticism alone. But there's a sensual undercurrent to this nurturing gesture. The scalp is densely packed with nerve endings, making it responsive to the lightest scratch or pull. When a man combs his fingers through a woman's hair, he's engaging with what Jung might call the Great Mother archetype, the primal provider of safety and pleasure. The contrast between firm massage at the roots and gentle tugs at the ends can create a hypnotic rhythm, blurring the line between relaxation and arousal. Hair also carries cultural and personal symbolism. Think of Samson's strength in his locks or the intimate act of cutting or styling a lover's hair. To touch it is to engage with a woman's identity, her vanity, her vulnerability. A hand cradling the back of her head during a kiss speaks to protection, while fingers twisting through strands in passion suggest possession. The key is attentiveness. Does she melt into scalp pressure, or shiver when you graze the delicate hairs at her nape? Jung would say these responses reveal how deeply the anima associates hairplay with surrender. Spot 5. The inner wrist. The inside of the wrist is a secret map to the soul. Thin-skinned and vein-close, this pulse point has been revered across cultures as the body's spiritual gateway, from Ayurvedic pressure points to vampire mythology. Jung saw the wrist's vulnerability as symbolic of the anima's soul energy, the place where life force and emotion rise to the surface. To touch it is to commune with something primal, a silent dialogue between two nervous systems. What makes this spot so potent is its duality. It's both public and private. A thumb stroking her wrist during dinner is a clandestine message, while lips pressed to it in intimacy feel like a kiss to her very heartbeat. The radial artery's visible flutter under pressure makes touch here uniquely visceral, creating a feedback loop of arousal. In traditional Chinese medicine, the wrist's spirit door point is believed to calm anxiety, which explains why women often describe wrist kisses as melting them. Jung might interpret this response as the anima's craving for emotional resonance. Unlike more overtly sexual zones, the wrist represents connection first, pleasure second. The lightest touch here, a fingertip tracing veins, a tongue tasting salt, can feel more invasive than a grope elsewhere because it bypasses physicality and taps directly into her nervous system. When you touch her wrist, you're not just touching skin. You're touching time itself. Spot 6. The feet/ankles. Few body parts carry as much taboo, and therefore unconscious desire, as the feet. Jung's shadow theory explains why. What society represses, the psyche fetishizes. From Victorian ankle fascination to modern foot worship kinks, this zone's erotic power lies in its forbiddenness. But beyond Freudian repression, Jung would argue feet symbolize our groundedness, our connection to earth and instinct. To touch them is to acknowledge a woman's animal self, the part of her that walks through the world. The ankles and arches are packed with nerve endings that respond to both pain and pleasure, making them ideal for sensory play. A firm massage can release full-body tension, reflexologist premise, while lighter touches, a finger tracing the Achilles tendon, teeth grazing an arch, trigger reflexive twitches that feel involuntary, heightening the sense of vulnerability. In many cultures, washing feet is an act of devotion, which Jung might link to the anima's longing for sacred intimacy. What makes foot attention so transgressive, and thus thrilling, is its cultural framing as unsexy. When a man breaks that taboo with deliberate focus, it signals complete acceptance of her body's entirety. The shadow, after all, isn't just about repression, it's about wholeness. Spot 7. The ears. The ear is the body's backdoor to the unconscious. Jung saw whispering as a direct line to the anima, the voice of the psyche that bypasses rational thought. This explains why earplay can feel so disproportionately intense. It combines physical sensation, the earlobe sensitivity, with psychological infiltration, words breathe directly into the auditory cortex. From nibbles to whispered secrets, ear stimulation creates what neuroscientists call auditory tactile synesthesia, a blurring of senses that feels transcendent. The helix's curve responds to tongue flicks, while the inner shell shivers at warm breath. But the real power lies in vocal vibration. A growl or moan delivered directly into her ear vibrates through bone conduction, reaching her brain faster than spoken words. Jung might call this the ultimate anima seduction, where touch and sound merge to awaken the voice within. In myth, ears were portals for divine messages. In intimacy, they're conduits for desire's rawest expressions. While exploring these erogenous zones through a Jungian lens reveals powerful pathways to intimacy, we must pause at a crucial warning from Jung himself. Touch without conscious connection becomes mere projection, a hollow performance that ultimately leaves both partners feeling emptier than before. The anima and animus don't respond to mechanical stimulation alone. They crave the alchemical fusion of physical touch and emotional presence. This is why the most technically perfect lover can still leave a woman feeling used, while an imperfect but fully present touch can feel transcendent. Jung's concept of projection explains why disconnected intimacy fails. When we touch someone while lost in our own fantasies, projecting an ideal rather than seeing the real person before us, we're not truly making contact. The woman becomes merely a screen for our desires, not a conscious participant in the dance. You might expertly trace every erogenous zone we've discussed, but if your mind is elsewhere, calculating reactions, performing a role, or worse, viewing her as an object, the anima recognizes the deception at a soul level. The body may respond, but the psyche will withdraw. This explains why so many report feeling lonelier after empty sexual encounters than before them. The antidote lies in what Jung called psychological relatedness, the capacity to touch while fully inhabiting the moment with another conscious being. This demands vulnerability from both partners. For the man, it means releasing the safety of performance and daring to be seen in his uncertainty. For the woman, it requires trusting that her partner seeks not just her body's responses, but her human experience. When nails dig into a lower back during passion, do they communicate hunger for flesh alone, or hunger for her essence? When lips brush a wrist, is it to check off a sensual technique or to drink in her living pulse? Modern sexuality often forgets that erogenous zones extend beyond the physical. Jung mapped the psyche's erotic geography, places where memory, emotion, and spirit converge with nerve endings. A woman's neck may arch not just because you've studied its sensitivity, but because your presence makes her feel safe enough to surrender. Her fingers might intertwine with yours not from reflex, but because something in your touch whispers, "I want to know you, not just please you." This explains why the same woman might recoil from a technically perfect touch from one partner while melting into awkward but heartfelt caresses from another. The shadow side of this work emerges when we use Jungian concepts as manipulation rather than revelation. Memorizing that the inner wrist symbolizes soul connection means nothing if you're only exploiting that knowledge to get laid. The anima detects such deception instinctively, hence why players eventually leave a trail of women who feel inexplicably used despite apparent mutual consent. Real intimacy requires the courage to touch with your whole self, not just your hands. As Jung wrote, "Where love reigns, there is no will to power." Ultimately, these 7 spots matter not because they're buttons to press, but because they're languages to learn. The lower back's mother archetype, the wrist's pulse of life, the ear's whisper of the unconscious. They're portals to connection when approached with reverence. Touch becomes sacred when it says, "I meet you here in truth," rather than, "I make you feel this way." This is why, after exploring all the psychology of pleasure, we return to Jung's simplest and most profound wisdom. The body responds to technique, but the soul only answers to presence. As we've journeyed through these 7 powerful zones, from the protective curve of the lower back to the whispering intimacy of the ears, we've uncovered something far deeper than mere physical pleasure points. Each spot represents a conversation between body and psyche, where touch becomes a language of the unconscious. The lower back's mother archetype offers safety, the neck's maiden energy invites vulnerability, while the pulse of the wrist connects directly to life force itself. The hands unite opposites, hairplay awakens primal nurturance, forbidden foot touches dance with shadow desires, and ears open portals to the soul through breath and sound. Now I'd love to hear from you. Which of these spots surprised you most? Did you instinctively resonate with one more than others? Share in the comments how you've experienced these connections, or which archetypes, anima/animus, you recognize shaping your own desires. This is where psychology gets personal, and your stories bring these concepts to life. And if you found this fusion of Jungian wisdom and sensual truth compelling, you won't want to miss what's coming next. In our upcoming video, we'll dive into Jung's most provocative territory, the hidden sexual symbolism in dreams. Why do certain images and scenarios recur in our unconscious night after night? What do erotic dreams really reveal about our deepest longings? It's a revelation that will change how you understand both your fantasies and your waking intimacy. Hit subscribe so you don't miss this uncensored journey into the psyche's secret language. Until then, remember, the most powerful erogenous zone will always be the conscious mind behind the touch.